I feel that it seems to me that you are constantly bringing up things that I've already addressed. That when I brought up in the comment you're replying to, I addressed your concern, and you somehow didn't see it. And then you go and say I don't acknowledge the things you're bringing up when I've acknowledged them from the start. I acknowledged the problem with completely planned economies from the start. I mentioned the differences between this and a completely planned economy, and you're now getting it because I have diligently clarified to you a million times, you know. And you also bring up this attitude of like I'm waving my hands and going, oh, it'll be easy. I've never said that it would be easy, but a lot of these things you bring up have already been addressed. The government procurement process in the United States depends on private producers, depending on if it's classified like weapons or some other thing. There's some amount of control that the government asserts, the standards of secrecy, maybe who they can sell to, in the case of arms. But in general, they also release stuff, the research into flat screens. They release that into the private economy to allow there to be companies that make flat screen TVs, so they didn't just have one producer. They got the technology, they had them produced at a high cost for themselves, but the technology was such that as the market picked it up, there would be more companies, and those companies then sell to the government and to the private buyers. When the government wants a product that it knows it needs for a long term and it needs it to be consistent, it doesn't necessarily need it to be good, but it needs it, in some absolute sense better than everything else. But it needs it to be consistent. It makes a specification, an ISO standard often, that, uh, or for example, that specifies how good the thing needs to be. And other producers can see if their product meets it or see what the gap is between their product and that other thing and decide whether it's worth it for the price to produce the gap. You also seem to have ignored from the start my point. When you complain, oh, you're going to be subsidizing clothes. What about that? Another worm there out of the can. Um, we are currently subsidizing the idea 100% of a pensioner's clothes purchase. The subsidy simply goes straight to the pensioner, right? And then they give it to the clothes producer. So the difference between that and my idea is not that we're subsidizing something 100%. It's already getting subsidized 100%. I'm saying that we can split the subsidizing up so that some of the money is given straight to the producer instead of all of it given to the pensioner. And that is because, for example, let's say the price of wheat skyrockets, which it might because of the wheat rust. Then you need to give more money to the pensioner, right? Because all their wheat-based product, a lot in the West, uh, we're going to go through the roof. But with the commissary idea, and again, remember, it's not just a physical commissary. It could be subsidies. The commissary could be distributed, online purchasing, allowing pensioners to use their cards that where so that they could go to a grocery and get bread. But the thing is, by subsidizing the bread as well on that side, you can ensure that if there's going to be $100 million more in the cost of getting wheat-based products, that money goes straight to the wheat producers. If you go and have to give the pensioners that $100 million distributed between the pensioners, that's not going to be as efficient. It'll take more than $100 million. Why? Because some of those pensioners are allergic to wheat. They don't buy wheat. They don't eat bread, or they're on an Atkins diet. You know, so that price of this skyrocketing isn't actually affecting them. Okay, it isn't actually affecting them. Right? So you have to give a bunch of everybody more money, but a lot of that money is going to go to other products besides the one that has the spike that's causing the problem. So you're already giving them 100% subsidy, and I'm simply saying it will help us to balance the equation to have some influence on both sides. And I have not said that the government would produce these things at all. Okay, I said that in keeping prices low, we have the advantage of the fact that our U.S. government and any sizable, any government really, is already buying almost every kind of product that you need for sustainable living because they all support militaries and for other reasons beyond that. And lots of office products and cleaning products because they have already have facilities. So they're already procuring stuff that has specific specifications, has costs that are fairly standard without the marketing overhead because it's through government contract instead of individual going and buying things one at a time. And I simply pointed out that these are already low cost goods and they're already good enough for the sustenance and the utilitarian purposes. And this will mean that the cost of the subsidy, the difference between the cost of the product and the fixed price can be kept small simply by utilizing goods we already get. And since we're talking about survival and sustenance, that covers all kinds of things that, maybe most things that would fall under the kind of products we're talking about. Okay. You don't seem to want to face that no, the USSR is an open economy because they had to get some things abroad. Well, they did all kinds of crazy stuff to stop getting wheat abroad because they wanted it to be closed. No system is truly closed. Even the whole universe might not be a closed system. So it seems to me disingenuous for you to act to say, well, officially, even the USSR economy was open, as if the fact that it's openness is a vastly different degree than my idea. As if you can't see or refuse to acknowledge the difference between a sub-economy for pensioners where the the people purchasing are not producers anymore, and that it's a fraction of what's going on, and we're already supposedly funding that fraction survival. Seem to ignore that and act like, well, the fact that if you look at it a certain way, even the USSR's economy was open, that means there's no difference between the USSR economy's amount of openness versus mine. Whereas my idea is we have a basically, what we call a free or modern or Western economy that has a pension system, right? That has a pension system that uh, addresses production of the goods that are needed, as well as funding the purchase of goods that are needed by the pensioners. And you refuse to acknowledge the differences. Now, I have acknowledged the problems of planned economy, but I don't see you acknowledging my points, uh, like like the fact that there's open versus closed. No, you found a way to deny that on some trivial technical thing that obviously doesn't make that distinction go away because it's the amount. I'm a relativist. I don't believe in absolutely open or absolutely closed. Okay, so it's relative, and there's a gross difference between how closed the planned economy is that you've been talking about, and how closed this sub economy, or what it means for it to be a sub economy. That by the fact that we have to talk about it as a sub economy existing in another economy, that it might be important what that other economy is, and the fact that that economy is really much bigger than this sub economy, you don't want to grant any kind of distinction like that, right? Or that this economy doesn't have producers. So how can you think of it as a fully isolatable sub economy when the market has no producers in it? You don't see the distinction there, or why do you avoid that? You ask for a lot of acknowledgement. I don't usually, but as a result, I'm having to say the same thing over and over again that you could already see in my previous videos and comments. Okay, uh, it's it's difficult to persist in a situation like this. I don't see why I should have to drag you to this distinction. You read and saw the distinction about open versus closed, and you can simply discard and ignore that like it's not a real distinction. Like the USSR economy is similar enough to this economy that I'm talking about, the sub economy, which is obviously not a full economy because it has no producers. You ignored the fact that if you looked at my economy as a whole economy, it would be an economy